Hello, and welcome to the Middle Ages, where every cough is a harbinger of death, and any hope of recovery is as illusory as the belief in clean straw under your mattress. Imagine this: there are no antibiotics, no anesthesia, not even basic hygiene, just the creak of candles, the stench of rot, monks with leech jars, and a procession of superstitions. But before you settle in, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm really curious to see who's joined us. Now get comfortable. Let's begin. You open your eyes to darkness. Not the soft, velvet kind of darkness you might remember from the 21st century, but a thick, damp, all encompassing blackness, broken only by the occasional flicker of a tallow candle. The ceiling above you is low and uneven, beams thick with the stains of centuries. Your body, as you slowly come to realize, is enveloped in the coarse embrace of a woolen blanket. There is no memory foam, no soft sheets, only the prickling sensation of unwashed, scratchy fabric and the gentle hum of something, perhaps a mouse, perhaps something larger, scratching in the straw beneath your bed. Welcome to the 12th century. No, you have not traveled in time because you ate too much cheese before bed, nor are you dreaming. You are, quite simply, here, and not just anywhere, but in the drafty, echoing quarters of Canterbury Cathedral. Outside, a rainstorm has just passed, leaving the stone walls slick with moisture and the air thick with the scent of wet earth, rotting leaves, and something far less pleasant. You turn your head and notice, sitting not far from your bed, the shadowy form of Thomas Becket himself, former archbishop, martyr, and, depending on whom you ask, either an unbearable troublemaker or a saintly victim. He looks a little smug, as though he alone understands the punchline to some cosmic joke. He says nothing, but his presence is unmistakable. For reasons you cannot quite comprehend, you are now part of his world. There is a distinct chill in the air, the kind that seeps into your bones and whispers that you are not in Kansas or any other comforting modern place anymore. There are no electric lights. The only glow comes from the candle and the embers in a distant hearth, which does nothing to relieve the cold. You can hear the muffled voices of monks chanting somewhere in the cathedral's depths. Their Latin drones on, monotonous and endless, like a lullaby designed to make sure no one ever feels truly awake. You sit up, and the blanket slips to the floor with a thud, raising a cloud of dust that catches in your throat. You cough, a small, innocent sound, and immediately realize that in this time, a cough is not just a cough. It could be the first ominous sign of something much worse. You do not yet know it, but you have entered an era where every symptom is a portent, every sniffle a potential death sentence. You can already imagine the local physicians sharpening their leeches and preparing to drain a little of your blood, just in case. You take a shaky step across the cold floor, your bare feet meeting stones that have felt the tread of thousands of anxious souls before you. There is no privacy here. No warm shower awaits you. In fact, the very concept of hygiene is so alien that if you attempted to explain the wonders of indoor plumbing to Thomas Becket, he would likely declare you possessed by a demon, or at least hopelessly mad. Becket, for his part, merely shrugs as if to say, "You wanted history? Here it is." You get the feeling he is enjoying your discomfort. Outside your window, which is little more than an opening with no glass, just a thin, oiled parchment covering, you hear the sound of horses' hooves, the distant clang of a bell, and somewhere nearby, a baby crying. Life goes on, indifferent to your confusion. You try to piece together how you arrived here, but your memories are slippery, as if your modern life has been scrubbed away by the relentless winds of medieval time. You know your name vaguely. You know that you are yourself, but the rest, your friends, your smartphone, your favorite food delivery app, has vanished like a wisp of incense. All you have now is the present moment, cold, dark, and more than a little alarming. On a small, rough hewn table beside your bed, you find a half eaten loaf of bread, so hard you could use it as a weapon, and a wooden cup filled with what you suspect is ale. No coffee, no tea, not even clean water. You take a sip out of desperation and are rewarded with the taste of something sour, flat, and vaguely metallic. Thomas Becket watches, his eyes twinkling with an amusement that borders on cruelty. You have the unsettling feeling that he knows what is coming. In this time, death is not a distant possibility, but a neighbor who might knock at your door any day. Disease is everywhere, lurking in the air, the water, the food, even in the touch of another person. People die often and die young, and you, newly arrived and unprepared, are now just another frail body among millions who will never make it past their first infection. Thomas Becket finally speaks, his voice as dry as the bones of saints buried beneath the cathedral floor. "Welcome," he says, "to the real Middle Ages. You may not enjoy your stay, but I assure you it will be unforgettable." And with that, he vanishes, leaving you alone in your chilly cell, faced with the grim reality that here, in the 12th century, history is not just boring, it is deadly. You pull the scratchy blanket back over yourself and stare at the ceiling, counting each ancient beam, each shadowy corner. If you are going to survive here, you will need more than luck. You will need endurance, a strong stomach, and perhaps, most importantly, a willingness to see the dark comedy in your own suffering. After all, as you will soon learn, misery in the Middle Ages is not just a state of being, it is a way of life. You awaken to a smell so thick and complex that you are not sure whether to gag, laugh, or simply accept your new reality. It is a fragrance that could be bottled and sold as Eau de Middle Ages. It is everywhere, in the stone, in the straw, in your own hair. At first, you try to remember the last time you showered, but soon it dawns on you. In this world, the word shower has not even been invented. Your skin itches beneath your rough linen shirt. The source becomes clear when you inspect the straw filled mattress beneath you. It is crawling with tiny, busy lives, fleas, lice, and perhaps other creatures whose names you would rather not learn. You had imagined the past as dusty, but noble. Now you realize it is simply dirty. In the 12th century, dirt is not an enemy, but a fact of life, almost a companion. You stumble from your straw bed, brushing off what you hope is only dust. The room is dim, and you cannot find a candle. Instead, the rising sun leaks through the oiled parchment covering the window, painting everything with a greasy, pale light. Outside, the cathedral courtyard teems with life and more dirt. You see chickens scratching the earth, dogs trotting along with their tongues hanging out, and children playing a game that seems to involve rolling in the mud. For a moment, you are jealous of their carefree attitude. You shuffle toward what passes for a wash basin, a wooden bucket filled with rainwater collected from the roof. The water is cloudy, floating with mysterious specks. There is no soap, there are no towels. You dip your hands in, flinch at the chill, and try to wash your face, only to realize that you are now simply wet and dirty. Behind you, someone snickers. You turn to find a serving boy with crooked teeth and an even more crooked sense of humor. He wipes his nose with the back of his hand and offers you a filthy rag. You decline politely, and he shrugs. In the 12th century, cleanliness is not next to godliness. It is simply out of reach. As you make your way through the cathedral, you notice the floors. They are not paved or swept, but covered with rushes and herbs, meant to absorb the worst of the filth, but more often just trapping it. Mixed in with the rushes are the detritus of daily life: fish bones, chicken feathers, spilled ale, and a crust of something green you do not wish to investigate further. The air is thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, animal dung, and smoke from dozens of poorly ventilated hearths. Every breath is a reminder that you are now living in a time before air fresheners, or indeed before the concept of fresh at all. The monks you pass do not look particularly clean either. Their habits are stained, their faces bearded and lined, their fingernails rimmed with centuries of grime. If you listen carefully, you can hear the collective scratching of 100 heads as lice move from one scalp to another with the enthusiasm of pilgrims flocking to a relic. You realize, with a certain grim amusement, that the saints you once admired in paintings probably itched just as much as you do now. There is a sudden commotion near the cloister. A pair of lay brothers is struggling with what looks like a chamber pot, an object you soon come to recognize as the medieval solution to indoor plumbing. They tip it into a trench outside the kitchen, and the stench that arises is biblical in scale. No one seems to mind. The smell is simply another note in the symphony of filth that defines daily life. Later, as you attempt to eat your morning meal, you find that the food itself is not free from the omnipresent dirt. The bread is hard and flecked with something suspiciously like mouse droppings. The ale is warm and slightly sour. A bowl of pottage, vegetables boiled into oblivion, offers no comfort. You take a bite and feel grit grind between your teeth. You look for something to wipe your hands on, but the only cloth available is already filthy from a dozen previous meals. Thomas Becket appears beside you once more, this time holding a rather impressive onion. In my day, he intones, we believed that washing too often was dangerous. The body's oils protect you from illness, or so they said. I must confess, I never cared much for baths myself. You want to ask him how he managed the smell, but decide it is wiser not to offend a martyr, especially one who seems to enjoy your discomfort. You try to recall the last time you used toothpaste or a toothbrush or even clean water to rinse your mouth. Here, dental care consists of chewing aromatic herbs, sage perhaps, or mint if you are lucky. You chew a sprig, but the taste only highlights the deeper, permanent flavor of neglect. It strikes you that in this world, disease and filth are not simply hazards, they are part of the social fabric. People share lice and bed bugs as easily as they share bread and gossip. The rich may wash more often than the poor, but even kings are at the mercy of the same relentless grime. Cleanliness is not a virtue, survival is. As you sit back on your hard wooden bench, you realize that your own scent is changing. You are becoming one with your environment, merging with the great unwashed masses of history. The irony does not escape you. In striving for survival, you must accept filth as a companion, perhaps even as a shield against a world that offers few protections and even fewer comforts. You glance once more at Thomas Becket. He smiles, almost kindly, and says, do not worry. By the end of your stay, you will not even notice the smell. You are not sure if this is meant to be comforting. In the 12th century, after all, your nose is just another casualty of daily life. You cough again. Just a little. A shallow, dry sound, barely enough to rattle the straw mattress or disturb the dust motes dancing in the weak morning light. Yet in the 12th century, even the faintest cough sets off a slow, inexorable march toward anxiety. You realize with a sinking feeling that in this era, every little ache, every twinge of discomfort might be the first pebble in an avalanche of disaster. At first, you try to convince yourself it is nothing. Maybe it is the chill from last night's draft, or the aftermath of inhaling too much smoke from the cathedral's many braziers. Maybe it is the dust, or the odd taste of last night's pottage. Was that actually a turnip, or something more sinister? Yet you cannot ignore the subtle, persistent pressure building behind your eyes, the prickling in your throat, or the heaviness in your limbs. The symptoms are gentle, almost polite, but you know better than to trust them. You glance around for reassurance, hoping to see someone else coughing, sniffling, or at least looking unwell, but the monks you pass in the corridor seem robust. Well, as robust as one can appear in a world where breakfast consists of stale bread and despair. One or two are scratching at their scalps or muttering prayers under their breath, but otherwise they go about their duties as if nothing is amiss. You envy their stoicism and suspect it is less the result of faith than of grim familiarity. By mid-morning, you are sure that your cough has grown louder. Your skin feels too tight for your bones, and there is a faint, burning ache in your chest. You remember what Thomas Becket told you about medieval medicine, and your optimism drains away like water from a broken bucket. The only remedy available is a steaming mug of ale handed to you by a passing servant who smells of onions and wet dog. The ale is tepid, its taste both sour and flat. You swallow it anyway, praying for relief, but it only leaves you thirstier and slightly queasy. There are no pills, no syrups, no comforting promises from cheerful pharmacists. There is only the advice of those who survive their last bout of illness. Drink more ale, get some rest, and above all, pray. The monks, when they notice your increasingly frequent cough, offer their own special blend of support, a mixture of herbal infusions and whispered benedictions. You accept both, but neither does much good. The herbs taste like boiled hay and smell only marginally better. The prayers, meanwhile, seem to rise up and vanish, lost somewhere in the smoke stained rafters high above. Afternoon brings a new symptom, a creeping chill that settles in your bones. You shiver, and the monks take this as a sign to cover you in additional layers of wool and linen. Their kindness is genuine, but the extra weight only adds to your discomfort. You try to sit up and fail. Your head throbs. You cough again, and this time it is deeper, more insistent. You stare at the pale sky through your cloudy window and wonder if you are imagining it all. Thomas Becket appears at your bedside, looking more solid now, as if your suffering gives him substance. He regards you with a mixture of pity and amusement. Do not worry, he says, his tone laced with irony. You have not been poisoned yet. His words do little to reassure you. He sits, folds his hands, and begins recounting tales of other famous illnesses, kings felled by fevers, peasants wasted by wasting diseases, bishops who coughed themselves into sainthood. In each story, the moral is the same. Illness does not discriminate, and neither does death. You watch the daily rhythm of the cathedral pass you by. The monks chant and pray, sweeping up the rushes, feeding the ever hungry dogs, tending to their endless chores. No one seems surprised that you are falling ill. In fact, it seems expected. Disease, you realize, is not an event, but a constant companion, a familiar shadow lurking at the edge of every candle's glow. As evening falls, your condition worsens. You cannot taste your food. Your throat is raw, and swallowing is an ordeal. You are offered another steaming mug, this time a concoction of garlic, honey, and mysterious herbs. It is supposed to draw the sickness from your body. You sip it dutifully and try not to gag. Outside, the bells toll the hours. Their melancholy echo a reminder that time does not stop, even for the unwell. Before sleep, a kindly monk leaves you with a final piece of advice. Trust in God, rest as much as you can, and avoid thinking dark thoughts. You promise to try, but darkness comes easily in the 12th century. The cold creeps deeper, and your body aches in ways you cannot describe. You cough again, the sound louder now, more insistent. As you drift toward uneasy sleep, you begin to understand. Here, illness is a journey, not a destination. Each day brings new symptoms, new discomforts, and fewer illusions. In this world, The road of sickness is well trodden and very, very lonely. Thomas Becket's voice whispers in your ear, both mocking and strangely comforting. Do not worry. You are only at the beginning. You do not have the luxury of hiding your symptoms for long. By the next morning, your cough has become a steady drumbeat, and your skin is clammy beneath the layers of scratchy wool. You wake to a circle of wary faces, monks, servants, and a few curious onlookers hover at a respectful distance, as if proximity to your suffering might invite misfortune. You are, after all, in a world where disease moves not just through air or touch, but in the collective imagination, through glances, curses, and whispers. It does not take long for word of your illness to spread. You have, in effect, become an object of communal fascination, a living warning sign. And so, with little fanfare, you are informed that the cathedral's best healer will be summoned to your bedside. The phrase best healer in the 12th century should be understood with a healthy sense of irony, since the competition consists mainly of other healers who have not yet killed their patients outright. You await the arrival with mounting dread. When he finally appears, he does not inspire confidence. He is a small, round man with bushy eyebrows, a faint sheen of sweat, and a robe that once aspired to cleanliness, but long ago gave up the fight. He smells strongly of onions and something medicinal, wormwood perhaps, or simply the unwashed residue of many patients. He carries a battered leather bag filled with an arsenal of horrors, knives, hooks, jars of leeches, and bundles of dried herbs. The first thing the healer does is regard you as if you are both fascinating and slightly disappointing. He asks you to stick out your tongue, which you do, and he peers at it as if reading a map. He then sniffs your breath, declaring it unbalanced. You feel oddly insulted, but he is already rummaging through his bag for a vial of something brown and viscous. Without warning, he drips a few foul drops onto your tongue. The taste is so bitter that you struggle not to retch. He then listens to your chest, placing a cold, calloused hand against your skin. His diagnosis arrives with the gravity of a prophecy. You are suffering from a fever of the evil winds. The monks, standing nearby, nod solemnly, as if they hear this every day. You want to ask about germs, about infection, about any scientific explanation, but you know better. This is a world where the four humors rule all: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Your symptoms, he declares, are a sign that these humors are in wild disarray. The healer decides that the best course of action is bloodletting. You try to protest, but he shushes you with the calm confidence of a man who has never doubted his own wisdom. A bowl is brought, a knife is produced, and before you know it, he is nicking a vein in your arm with the deftness of long practice. Blood, your blood, dribbles into the bowl, dark and frighteningly abundant. The healer watches with satisfaction, as if the answer to all life's problems lies in the bottom of that vessel. After the bloodletting, he insists on another remedy, a poultice of boiled onions and goose fat, to be rubbed vigorously on your chest. The mixture is warm and slimy, and the smell clings to you like a curse. The healer then wraps your torso in a linen cloth that was possibly white several years ago and instructs you to rest. No exertion, no strong emotions, and absolutely no reading of Latin texts. The monks nod again, as if this last advice is crucial. Your bed is surrounded by the tools of medieval medicine, herbs hung from the rafters, jars of pungent ointments, and a small dish of garlic meant to ward off evil spirits. You are told to chew the garlic if you feel particularly weak, but the taste is so overwhelming that you wonder if it is meant to cure you or simply distract you from your misery. Thomas Becket materializes at your bedside, looking both sympathetic and amused. Bloodletting, he muses, is the answer to almost every problem here. Headache, bloodletting. Toothache, bloodletting. Broken heart, you guessed it, bloodletting. If it does not kill you, it may yet save your soul. You try to laugh, but your chest hurts too much. The healer is not yet done. He gives strict orders to the monks to keep your chamber cool, but not cold, quiet, but not silent. You are to be turned every few hours to prevent bad vapors from settling in your body. Every remedy is administered with a seriousness that borders on the absurd, and you get the sense that your recovery, if it comes, will be more due to luck than to medicine. By nightfall, you feel no better, but you do feel different. Lighter from blood loss, sticky from the poultice, and uncomfortably aware that you are now a canvas for medieval medical theory. The healer, satisfied with his efforts, tells you that he will return in the morning to assess your progress and, if necessary, to repeat the procedure. You lie back, exhausted, and listen to the quiet shuffle of feet as the monks depart. Thomas Becket offers a final piece of advice. Do not argue with the healer. In this century, it is the patient who is most likely to be blamed if things go wrong. You take this wisdom to heart, resolving to comply, to endure, and above all, to avoid any further displays of skepticism. Outside, the rain begins again, tapping against the oiled parchment window. You pull your blanket close, the smell of onions and goose fat filling your nostrils, and wait for sleep, or something like it, to take you. The healer's words echo in your mind. Rest, no strong emotions, no Latin. You realize, with a certain grim irony, that in the 12th century, surviving illness is as much about patience as about medicine. And so you wait, knowing that the battle between body, belief, and bad remedies has only just begun. Your journey through the halls of medieval medicine has only just begun. The next morning, you wake before dawn, jolted from restless sleep by the sound of bells and the unmistakable feeling that your head is packed with wool. Your chest aches. The spot on your arm where the healer's knife found your vein throbs faintly, a dull reminder of yesterday's bloodletting. You lie very still, hoping that perhaps, if you do not move, your symptoms might lose interest and depart. Unfortunately, the only thing that departs is your sense of comfort. The healer arrives, this time accompanied by a pair of helpers. Two young monks, both of whom look terrified and determined in equal measure. He begins by sniffing your breath again, as if expecting some miraculous improvement overnight. He frowns. You cough, as if on cue, and the healer takes this as a sign to proceed with further measures. You sense you are about to become the centerpiece in a parade of medieval rituals. He starts with the simplest of remedies, herbs. Bundles of dried leaves are hung from your bedposts, filling the air with the pungent scent of rosemary, sage, and something that might once have been lavender. The healer instructs you to breathe deeply, to draw the bad humors from your lungs. You comply, but all it seems to draw is a sneezing fit and a surge of irritation. The monks, however, look pleased. Smells, they believe, have power. Next comes the application of poultices. The healer's assistants set about grinding onions, garlic, and leeks into a sticky paste, which is then mixed with animal fat, goose if you are lucky, lard if you are not. This fragrant mass is slathered over your chest, wrapped with linen, and left to draw out the sickness. You feel less cured than marinated, but no one else seems concerned. The healer mutters prayers under his breath as he works, part medicine, part exorcism. Bloodletting, as you have already discovered, is the cornerstone of medieval medical thought. The healer examines your arm, pinching the skin as he contemplates whether to balance your humors further. Apparently, yesterday's efforts were not quite enough. He decides to let a little more blood, just to be safe. You are too weary to argue. The bowl appears again. The knife glints in the candlelight, and soon your lifeblood trickles out in slow, reluctant drops. You watch the process with a mixture of horror and resignation, wondering how much of you will remain if this continues much longer. Once the healer is satisfied, he produces a handful of leeches from a jar. For the stubborn sickness, he announces. The monks exchange uneasy glances. You do not have the strength to protest. The leeches are cold and slimy as they latch onto your skin, their tiny jaws working with a single-minded determination that is, in its way, admirable. The sensation is deeply unpleasant, and you try to distract yourself by counting the cracks in the ceiling. As the morning drags on, other treatments are proposed. You are urged to drink a concoction of bitter herbs steeped in sour ale, a potion so foul that it seems designed to test your will to live. You choke it down, trying not to gag, as the healer watches approvingly. A strong medicine for a stubborn illness, he intones. The monks bring hot compresses for your chest, heated stones wrapped in cloth, and a new set of prayers. Every hour brings another layer of ritual, another attempt to outwit the invisible forces of disease. By midday, you feel battered and bruised, a battlefield of medieval medicine. Your arm is bandaged, your chest is sticky, your mouth tastes of herbs, onions, and fear. Yet still the symptoms persist. Your fever waxes and wanes, your cough deepens, your limbs ache with a dull, relentless throb. The healer, undeterred, insists that the treatments must continue. The body must be cleansed, he explains, inside and out. The monks, for their part, treat you with the reverence usually reserved for relics. They sprinkle holy water in the corners of your chamber and chant prayers at regular intervals, hoping to drive away not only disease, but also any evil spirits who might be lurking nearby. At times, you almost wish for a visit from a spirit, just for a change of company. Thomas Becket drifts in and out, sometimes visible only as a shadow in the candlelight. He observes your suffering with a wry smile. If you survive, he remarks, it will be a miracle. If you die, you will be a martyr to the cause of medical progress, such as it is. You try to laugh, but the sound sticks in your throat. Afternoon brings a change in ritual. The healer decides to purify the air by burning herbs in a small brazier near your bed. Smoke fills the room, sharp and acrid, stinging your eyes and making you cough harder than ever. You can barely breathe, but the monks nod approvingly. Bad air, they believe, is the root of all illness, and smoke is its sworn enemy. By evening, you are exhausted, more from the treatments than from the illness itself. The healer finally takes his leave, promising to return at dawn. The monks tidy up the debris of the day: bowls, bloody cloths, handfuls of discarded herbs, while murmuring prayers for your recovery. You lie in the growing darkness, every limb heavy, every sense dulled. You realize, with a kind of bleak clarity, that here in the 12th century, ritual and medicine are one and the same. Each treatment is a prayer, each prayer a treatment, and hope is as much a part of the cure as any herb or knife. You close your eyes, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down on you, and try to surrender to sleep. As you drift away, Thomas Becket's voice echoes once more, half serious, half mocking. In the end, we are all experiments. You wake to a room thick with the stale scent of onions, sweat, and something less identifiable, but entirely unpleasant. Your mouth feels coated, your throat raw, and your head pulsing with an ache that seems to radiate from behind your eyes. You have become acutely aware that you are under siege, not by armies with banners and trumpets, but by a silent, invisible force. In the 12th century, no one knows the names of your enemies. You do, though. You have seen them magnified, rendered in plastic models, given terrifying Latin names in school books and documentaries. You know about viruses, tiny packets of genetic evil, and about bacteria, the ancient, single-celled conquerors of every surface and every body. Here, however, such knowledge is the property of the future. No one in this world will believe you if you try to explain. In fact, they may well prescribe more leeches, or worse, more prayers. As you lie in your bed, your skin slick with sweat, and your breathing shallow, you imagine what is happening beneath your flesh. You picture armies of bacteria marching down your throat, viruses hijacking your cells, multiplying without mercy. You think about how quickly an infection can move, how fragile the body is when defenses are breached. You recall antibiotics, those modern miracles, now as distant as the moon. You wonder what Pasteur or Fleming would say if they could see you now, being rubbed with goose fat and prayed over by monks. The healer returns, cheerful in the way only someone untouched by your suffering can be. He brings a fresh batch of bitter herbs, a new leech in a jar, and a list of further instructions for the monks. He tells you that your color is improving, which is a polite way of saying you are less green than you were yesterday. He discusses humors, miasmas, and the alignment of the planets as if they are undisputed facts, and the monks nod with the grave wisdom of those who have never encountered a microscope. Outside, life continues. Children run through the mud. Women draw water from a well that probably teems with more bacteria than a laboratory petri dish. A dog licks your hand, friendly, loyal, and undoubtedly a vector for every parasite known to medieval man. You are torn between appreciating the comfort and cringing at the invisible dangers. You wonder if it would be more merciful simply not to know, to accept bad air as the cause of all ills and leave it at that. The monks do their best. They keep the rushes on your floor fresh, sprinkling them with herbs meant to purify the air. One elderly brother insists on swinging a censer, filling the chamber with fragrant smoke. It does little to ease your symptoms, but it does make your eyes water, which the healer claims is a good sign. Better out than in, he says, meaning the humors, not the tears. As the hours crawl by, you reflect on the strange mix of superstition and practicality that rules this world. Illness is seen as a visitation, sometimes divine punishment, sometimes a cosmic accident. The stars, the weather, the shape of your urine, all are invoked as explanations. The monks debate whether you have angered a saint or if you simply caught a chill from the evil winds. They argue over your treatment, sometimes suggesting more radical measures, a change of bedding, an exorcism, a stricter regimen of fasting. At no point does anyone mention boiling water or washing hands or isolating the sick. These concepts are centuries away from entering their world. Sometimes you catch the healer staring at you thoughtfully, as if considering a diagnosis more complicated than the usual fever or imbalance. But in the end, he falls back on the familiar: more herbs, more rest, and above all, more faith. Your suffering is met with sympathy, but also with a sort of fatalism. People die. People have always died. The cause is less important than the ritual, the comfort, the story told afterward. Thomas Becket appears in the corner, his arms folded, his eyes bright with the irony of history. They do not know your enemy, he says, but they do know suffering. That is why their prayers are so long. You ask him, quietly, if he ever wished for better medicine in his own life. He only smiles, sad and knowing. Ignorance is a shield sometimes. Knowledge is a knife. Both can cut. You are left to ponder this as your fever rises and falls, as you drift between uneasy sleep and painful wakefulness. Your body fights its unseen war, and you can only guess who will win. The monks sing softly, the healer mumbles incantations, and outside, life goes on. A chicken pecks at the window. Somewhere, a bell tolls the hour. You imagine your body as a fortress under siege, its walls crumbling, its defenders exhausted. You long for the clarity of science, the certainty of diagnosis, the promise of a cure. Here, there is only hope, blind and stubborn. Here, there is only endurance. As night falls, you lie in the darkness, wondering how many before you have made this same journey without knowing the name of the enemy within. And Thomas Becket, fading into shadow, offers one last word. Survival here is mostly luck. The night drags on, unbroken, but for the distant chants echoing from the cathedral. Sometime before dawn, your restless dozing is interrupted by a soft procession of sandals on the stone. The monks are coming, but this time they do not carry bowls of herbs or pungent compresses. They come with relics, fragments of bone, wood, and cloth that to their minds offer more hope than any healer's knife or herbal brew. You are not alone in your suffering. Across Christendom, from crumbling hamlets to the cold, echoing cathedrals of kings, the sick are visited by these somber figures. They bring with them the promise of divine intervention, the hope that saints and martyrs, unlike mortal men, can intercede when all earthly medicine has failed. Their faith is ironclad, uncracked by the daily evidence of its inefficacy. A monk, younger than most, carries a tiny splinter in a velvet pouch. It is a relic, supposedly a fragment of the true cross itself. He holds it over your head and intones a prayer so old and rhythmic it sounds more like a spell than a supplication. He tells you to close your eyes, to focus on the warmth he insists will flood your body. You feel nothing but fever and fatigue, but you mumble your own half-hearted prayer anyway. In this world, you never know which form of medicine or magic might tip the scales. Another brother produces a glass vial containing a pinch of what is claimed to be a saint's finger bone, suspended in cloudy oil. He dabs your forehead and chest, whispering that Saint Blaise once healed thousands of throat infections with a single touch. You would settle for relief from your own cough, which still rattles your ribs like dice in a cup. Yet, as with the other relics, nothing stirs. The cough is unimpressed. The monks, however, are undaunted. A senior monk, robes heavy with age and authority, produces a waxy tablet embossed with the likeness of St. Thomas Becket himself. Many pilgrims have been healed by the martyr's intercession, he says, glancing at the shadows where Becket's ghost seems to flicker with amusement. The tablet is pressed into your hand. You are told to grip it tight, to keep it close until your fever breaks. As dawn edges in, your room fills with the mingled scents of beeswax, incense, and sweat. The monks' voices weave around you, solemn and unyielding. For a moment, the weight of so much hope is almost comforting. You are not the first to pin your future on forces unseen, nor will you be the last. For a brief, delirious instant, you even imagine your symptoms fading, your body buoyed up by the certainty of all these prayers. Then a fresh wave of chills and aches arrives, as if to remind you who is truly in charge. No relic, no matter how sacred, seems able to ward off what festers inside your body. The monks see the return of your cough and fever, and their faces fall, briefly, before recovering into expressions of dogged faith. They redouble their efforts, chanting in Latin, anointing your brow, laying the relics in a precise around your pillow. Thomas Becket's apparition leans in, looking almost apologetic. Faith is a powerful thing, he whispers, but in this century it is rarely enough. Still, it is all they have. You wonder if this is meant to comfort you, or to suggest that hope is simply another kind of medicine, one that numbs, if not cures. Hours pass in a haze of chanting, incense, and half sleep. At times, the room seems crowded, not just with monks, but with the shades of 100 saints and martyrs, all called down from heaven to intervene on your behalf. You imagine them jostling in the rafters, debating who is responsible for your fate. None step forward. The fever rages on. Eventually, the monks withdraw, exhausted but steadfast. They promise to return, to try again with new relics, different prayers. You are left alone, clutching the wax tablet, your sheets damp with sweat. The relics have not worked any miracles, but neither have they done harm. You cannot decide whether this is a blessing or a disappointment. As the cathedral bells toll the next hour, you realize how little separates the medicine of this age from its faith. Both are rituals, both are comforts, both are attempts to exert some control over the uncontrollable. You wonder how many others have clung to relics in their darkest moments, hoping for rescue that never comes. Becket sits at the edge of your bed, his expression both mocking and kind. If the saints cannot help, at least they can keep you company, he says. You almost laugh. Company, in this age, is the best medicine you are likely to get. The day passes, filled with more prayers, more relics, and the same relentless symptoms. You come to understand that here, hope is not a cure. It is only a way to keep despair at bay, if only for one more night. The fever does not abate. As the sun rises sluggishly, you begin to sense a subtle shift around you, a change in the way the monks move, in the whispers that chase through the corridors like errant drafts. In the 12th century, the sickbed of anyone with even a hint of importance becomes the center of a swirling drama, half concern, half calculation. You lie in your small, airless room and watch as your world shrinks and yet somehow grows in significance. The monks no longer speak in ordinary tones. They murmur in huddles at the end of the hall, their eyes darting toward your door. A servant lingers too long, straightening your blanket and checking to see if you are breathing. Every time you cough, it seems to echo far beyond the stone walls, rattling through the cathedral like the chime of a warning bell. Rumors are the true currency of this era. They move faster than infection, carried from the kitchens to the cloisters, from altar boys to bishops, from beggars to merchants. Whispers about your health sprout in every corner. Some say you are at death's door. Others claim you have already slipped through it and that your ghost now haunts the halls. There are even tales of miraculous recovery, spread by hopeful novices and those who profit from optimism. You realize, with a cold sort of amusement, that the value of a life in this world increases the closer one is to death. As your body grows weaker, your social importance spikes. Distant cousins send word to inquire about your will. Political enemies debate whether your passing will tip the balance of power. Even strangers hope to gain a word, a blessing, a scrap of linen, anything that can be linked to your final hours and thus imbued with a little second-hand sanctity. The healer, sensing the tension, becomes more careful and more theatrical in his ministrations. He insists on elaborate rituals, calling for prayers from the entire community, as if to demonstrate that your impending fate is of the gravest concern. He brings extra candles, new bundles of herbs, and even attempts a complicated diagnostic involving the examination of your urine by candlelight. The results are, inevitably, inconclusive. The monks nod gravely, as if this proves something. Meanwhile, Thomas Becket's presence grows stronger, almost as if your proximity to death makes the boundary between worlds more permeable. He sits at your bedside, an ever watchful companion, sometimes speaking, more often silent, his eyes glinting with the irony that only a saint and a murder victim could possess. He leans close and confides in a low voice. When I died, they argued over my body before it was even cold. Every relic, every drop of blood became a commodity. Some mourned, most schemed. Death is not the end here. It is only the beginning of new bargains. You can see the truth of it in the way the monks look at you, with sorrow laced with calculation. It is not long before the cathedral's upper echelons become involved. A canon visits, standing at the foot of your bed and reciting prayers with one eye open, as if watching for signs, either of improvement or imminent demise. Messages are dispatched to distant superiors, updates carefully crafted to serve the needs of the living rather than the truth of the dying. Outside your room, the servants are suddenly more attentive. They bring you finer blankets, better bread, even wine, perhaps in hope of currying favor with your heirs, or perhaps to secure some minor mention in your final blessings. You are both flattered and appalled. In this world, even death is a performance, and the audience is eager for any role in the drama. As you drift in and out of fevered sleep, you catch fragments of their conversations. Someone is already discussing the fate of your possessions. Another speculates on the size and importance of your funeral. There is even debate about the merits of embalming, an expensive and dubious honor reserved for the most prominent corpses. You realize, with a perverse sense of satisfaction, that your death will be far more organized than your life ever was. Not everyone is as concerned with propriety. Some whisper about darker possibilities. Was your illness the result of poison, a curse, political maneuvering? In the 12th century, conspiracy flourishes as energetically as plague. Every death is suspect, every symptom a clue in someone's imagined plot. You wonder, as the rumors swirl, whether anyone really cares about you, the person beneath the fever and the rituals. Or are you simply a symbol now, a pivot point for gossip, intrigue, and opportunism? The answer is both comforting and bleak. Becket sits back, arms crossed, surveying the parade of anxious faces. The living cling to the dying not out of love, he says quietly, but out of hope for relics, for favor, for stories to tell in the candlelit dark. You almost envy the certainty of his own martyrdom with its neat narrative and its immediate canonization. Outside your window, bells toll for someone else's soul. You close your eyes, drifting between worlds, and wonder what stories will be told about your end and who will profit from your passing. In the 12th century, you do not die alone. You die in public, surrounded by faith, fear, and 1,000 eager witnesses. The hours pass slowly. Day and night blur together, divided only by the brief flare of a candle or the scraping of a wooden bowl on stone as your next unsatisfying meal arrives. Your body feels heavy and foreign. Limbs ache as if packed with sand. Your chest tightens with every breath, and a dull headache blooms behind your eyes like a persistent weed. Pain is your new constant, and it rules without mercy. The medieval sick room is not a sanctuary. It is more like a prison cell, albeit one dressed in the trappings of piety. The thin, damp blanket offers little comfort. The straw mattress grows lumpy and sour. Occasionally, a monk or servant comes in to adjust your bedding, to press a cool cloth to your forehead, or simply to check if you are still alive. Their visits blur together, punctuated by your own feeble attempts at conversation. After a while, you give up trying. Your world narrows to the size of your palate. You become intimately acquainted with the ceiling's cracks and the shadows that creep along the corners at dusk. You are visited by chills and then by fevers. You shiver, then sweat through your clothes, then shiver again. At some point, you lose count of the days. Time becomes a circular thing, marked only by pain's rhythm. The healer returns each morning, accompanied by his ever nervous assistants. He sniffs your breath, prods your chest, and frowns at your pallor. There is no attempt at comfort. Instead, he mutters to himself, blaming your condition on imbalanced humors, bad air, or perhaps his favorite theory, a recent alignment of sinister stars. He prescribes more bloodletting, which you now accept with the resignation of a condemned prisoner. Each cut is smaller, each bowl fills more slowly. Your body grows weaker, not stronger. Your diet is not designed for healing. Breakfast is a chunk of dry bread and a ladle of watery broth. Dinner is usually a pottage so bland and overcooked it could be described only as medicinal. There are no fresh fruits, no honeyed drinks, no nourishing comfort foods. Your stomach rebels, and most days you eat only to satisfy the watching eyes of the monks. They believe you must not give in to appetite, lest your humors become even more unruly. The monotony is occasionally broken by a new and creative treatment. One day, the healer applies a hot compress made of stinging nettles to your back, muttering about drawing out the fever. Another day, He insists on a steam bath, pouring boiling water over herbs and instructing you to breathe the scalding air. The experience leaves you dizzy and breathless, your cough even worse. Your visitors' conversations skirt the topic of death, as if by refusing to name it, they can hold it at bay. They talk about the weather, about distant relatives, about church politics. Sometimes they simply sit in silence, watching your labored breathing with anxious eyes. You sense that your presence is as much a warning as a comfort, a living memento mori for all who pass through the sick room. Isolation becomes your truest companion. The room, once bustling with monks and servants, gradually empties as your illness lingers. Fewer people risk staying too long by your side, and those who do stand back, hands folded, faces hidden in cowls. Even Thomas Becket, usually so eager with his sardonic commentary, keeps his distance, appearing as little more than a flicker at the edge of your vision. His voice, when it comes, is softer, edged with pity. Pain makes philosophers of us all, though few survive the lesson. Nights are the worst. The air grows cold, and the world shrinks to the sound of your own breathing, ragged and irregular. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling, your thoughts as fevered as your body. Sometimes you dream visions of sunlight and clean water, of soft sheets and laughter, but always you wake to the reality of your cage. In moments of clarity, you become acutely aware of your powerlessness. There are no choices here, no negotiations. You cannot refuse the healer's knife or the monk's prayers. You cannot ask for better food or for different company. You are quite simply at the mercy of fate, as countless others have been before you. Here, suffering is not a private affair, it is communal, almost ceremonial. Each ache, each groan is part of a great, unending liturgy of pain. You wonder, in your weaker moments, if there is meaning in any of it, if your struggle is a test or a punishment, or simply the world's indifferent shrug. The monks would tell you it is an opportunity for grace. The healer would call it a contest between humors. Thomas Becket, appearing once more, leans in to whisper, "It is just pain. That is all it has ever been." As another night descends, you curl into yourself, a small, shivering presence in the vast, uncaring universe of the medieval sick room. Tomorrow will bring more of the same pain, powerlessness, and the slow, grinding passage of time. And somehow you will endure. You know it before anyone else. It creeps into your bones, a dull, certain understanding that this time your body will not win. Each morning you wake a little further from yourself, as if drifting out to sea on a tide of fatigue and fever. The aches and chills remain, but now there is a peculiar calm, a sense that fighting is pointless. The end is close, and you have begun to make peace with it. Outside, the cathedral continues its ceaseless routine. Bells toll for services you no longer attend. Voices echo off the high stone walls, weaving in and out of your dreams. You see the monks move past your door with their eyes lowered, their prayers a steady drone on the other side of your feverish haze. You wonder if they are praying for you or simply against the silence that death threatens to bring. You try to summon regret, to feel that old panic that once accompanied the first signs of illness. But now you are strangely detached. Your world has contracted to the size of your palate. Your body is a foreign country, every sensation exaggerated and yet oddly distant. Even pain feels muffled, like thunder on the far side of a hill. You watch yourself from a distance, eating, coughing, answering questions, drifting back into sleep. At times, a monk comes to sit by your side. Sometimes he prays, sometimes he simply watches, sometimes he offers a hand for you to squeeze. You find you are grateful for the simple things: a cup of cool water, a clean cloth, a voice murmuring familiar words. The rest is lost in a fog of memories. You can barely recall the world before your illness, the taste of ripe fruit, the touch of sunlight, the comfort of a friend's laughter. Those are dreams now, fleeting and impossible. Your possessions, such as they are, have already begun their slow migration. You catch a servant looking over your spare cloak, a monk tidying your shoes with an eye to the fit. There is no malice in it. In this world, death is a matter of practical arrangements. You imagine the process has always been the same. As one body cools, another is dressed in its clothes, eats its food, fills its place in the long procession of days. You overhear the discussions just outside your door, quiet, urgent, but never quite as private as the speakers intend. Which prayers to say at your passing? Who will announce the news? How your meager possessions will be divided? You are oddly touched by the ritual, by the sense of order and continuity it brings. In your final days, you are both subject and spectator in the theater of death. Thomas Becket visits more frequently now, his form less ghostly, his voice less mocking. It is a peculiar thing, he remarks, sitting on the edge of your bed, to know the end and watch it come for you step by step. In my day, there was a little room for dread. Death arrived with a knife or an arrow, swift and final. But here it seeps in, slow and thorough. He studies your face for signs of fear, but you only shrug. Fear has been spent, replaced by a kind of dull curiosity. The healer, on the other hand, has become distant. There is nothing left for him to do. He visits, pokes and prods, then mutters excuses as he backs out of the room. His work is done. Your body is no longer a site for experiment or hope. The monks take over now, reciting their liturgies, anointing your forehead with oil, preparing you for the inevitable. You find your mind wandering to the little things. The way sunlight slants through the oiled parchment window, the rhythm of footsteps in the hall, the smell of rain on the stone courtyard. These are the final things, the small certainties of a world that will go on without you. You do not rage against it. There is no grand reckoning, no dramatic last words, only a slow loosening, a letting go. Your final conversations are short and mostly practical, where you want to be buried, what prayers should be said. You make a half-hearted joke about a relic, perhaps a lock of your hair for the cathedral, to add to the collection of holy oddities. The monks laugh quietly, as if such humor is both welcome and forbidden. When night comes, you feel the tiredness settle in your bones, heavy and irresistible. The room is quiet, save for the soft chanting in the next chamber. You lie on your back and watch the flicker of the candle, thinking how ordinary it all is. Death is not a storm or a trumpet blast. It is a gentle tide pulling you away from the shore. Thomas Becket's voice, softer than ever, lingers in your ear. It is almost done, and that too is a kind of freedom. You close your eyes, not in dread, but in a sort of relief. It is nearly over. The world will turn, the bells will ring, the sun will rise again over the cathedral, and you, well, you are finally at peace with it. When the end arrives, it is not heralded by trumpets or angels, nor even by a dramatic collapse. In the 12th century, death from illness is rarely theatrical. It is slow and practical, a dimming candle rather than a lightning strike. You sense it in your bones before anyone else notices. Breaths come slower. The pain has lost its sharpness and becomes a dull, distant echo. Even the monks, so attuned to the rituals of dying, seem to miss the precise moment when you cross the threshold. Your final hours unfold in a kind of haze, one where time loses meaning and memory surrenders to exhaustion. You drift in and out of sleep, carried on fevered dreams and the hushed murmurs of those who watch over you. Faces appear and disappear, voices blend into a single endless prayer. The monks are faithful to their task, taking turns at your side so that you will not die alone. This is not so much compassion as custom, but it is better than nothing. There are no last confessions, no climactic declarations. Your words have dwindled to monosyllables, your hands too weak to grasp even the relic pressed into your palm. A monk sits beside you, reciting psalms in Latin, his voice as monotonous and steady as the tolling of a bell. Occasionally, someone wipes your brow with a cool cloth or places a few drops of holy water on your lips. You cannot decide if these acts are for your benefit or for their own reassurance. You notice through the fog that the healer no longer comes. His hope of a medical triumph has faded, replaced by the practical business of dying. Now it is the domain of the monks and the quiet, methodical preparations for your passing. Someone lights a candle and places it at the foot of your bed. Another lays out the oil for anointing. The ritual is both ancient and curiously impersonal, as though they are following instructions on how to dismantle a particularly stubborn piece of furniture. Outside your chamber, life continues unabated. The bell rings for vespers. Footsteps echo down the corridors. Somewhere, a dog barks and a baby wails in the distance. The world is not waiting for your death. It barely acknowledges it at all. There will be no great pause, no celestial alignment. Even the cathedral itself seems indifferent, its stones unmoved by one more passing among thousands. In your final moments, Thomas Becket appears again, more real than ever, as if the boundary between life and death has grown paper thin. He sits quietly, regarding you with something like respect. No matter how many prayers they offer, he says softly, no matter how much ritual and relic, death remains itself, ordinary, inevitable, and altogether uninterested in our drama. You want to reply, but your tongue is heavy, your thoughts slow. The monks begin the prayers for the dying, their voices swelling and then fading as the candlelight wavers. A coldness settles over you, not unpleasant, just unfamiliar. Breathing becomes a conscious act, each inhalation longer, each exhalation slower. You sense the presence of others in the room, maybe angels, maybe just more monks, maybe only your own fevered imagination. There is no vision, no revelation, just a growing sense of distance, as if you are watching your own body from the rafters. Someone closes your eyes, not realizing you are still faintly aware. It does not matter. The world is receding, and you feel yourself slipping toward the dark. Outside, the night deepens. The candle at your bedside gutters low. The prayers become whispers, and your heartbeat, already faint, loses its rhythm. For a brief instant, everything is silent. The monks, the cathedral, even the wind outside, paused on the edge of your final breath. Then, as quietly as a sigh, it is done. The monks do not shout or wail. One feels for your pulse, another makes the sign of the cross. They murmur, Requiescat in pace, and begin to tidy the chamber. You have joined the company of the countless dead, lost to history, but, for a little while longer, remembered in this room. There is no heavenly chorus, no burst of light, just a slow, final exhalation, and then the world resumes its pace. The monks begin the next prayers. A servant fetches fresh linens. The healer will be summoned to confirm what everyone already knows. Outside, the bells ring for another service, their sound as indifferent as ever. Thomas Becket lingers, alone now in the candle's glow. It is done, he says, not with triumph or regret, but with the calm of one who has seen it all before. They will remember you for a while, perhaps even longer if you are lucky. But history moves on. And so it does. In the 12th century, death from illness is neither tragedy nor triumph, only the final page in an ordinary story. You have met it with as much dignity as anyone can muster, and now you are part of the silent multitude whose suffering built the world's forgotten foundations. As the candle flickers out, you drift away, one more shadow among many, vanished into the quiet dark. You are no longer there to witness it, but your death is not a private affair. The moment your breath leaves your body, you become an event, an occurrence to be managed, narrated, and most of all, witnessed. In the 12th century, dying may be solitary, but being dead is profoundly communal. Within minutes of your passing, the monks shift from caretakers to stage managers. The room, which has spent days cloaked in hush and shadow, comes alive with purposeful activity. Someone opens a window to let your spirit out. Others set about arranging your limbs with careful, ritualized gestures. There is an order to it all, a choreography honed by centuries of repetition. The body is straightened, the mouth closed, the hands folded, the eyes, if not already shut, gently pressed and sealed. Every movement is part superstition, part practicality. Word spreads as if on the wind. The sound of your death travels faster than any living footstep, moving through cloisters, kitchens, and even the cold stone courtyards beyond. Whispers turn to announcements. The important are notified first. The abbot, the priors, the senior canons. Then the less important are allowed to know. The news brings a brief flurry of attention. After all, a death disrupts the rhythm of daily life, even if only for a moment. Within the hour, the business of mourning is well underway. Monks gather in the corridor, heads bent together, muttering prayers and deciding who will be responsible for the various rituals. Someone is tasked with writing your name into the death register, a name that will, with luck, last as long as the parchment does. Another is dispatched to begin composing the first draft of the mortuary roll, a carefully worded account of your virtues and, just as importantly, your role in the cathedral's daily life. There is, of course, an audience. Death draws witnesses the way bread draws rats. Servants peek around doorways, pretending to tidy, but really there to glimpse your cooling form. Junior monks look on with a kind of grim curiosity. Some are frightened, others are thrilled. For the more senior brothers, death is an old acquaintance, familiar, predictable, almost dull. Yet they perform their parts dutifully, aware that every death is a rehearsal for their own. Your possessions are quickly inventoried. A list is made, and the distribution begins almost before the prayers end. Your blanket is folded and carried off by a servant. Your spare robe, only recently mended, finds a new owner before your body is even cold. A book, one you never finished reading, is spirited away by a monk who will, in all likelihood, claim it was a gift. Even your battered wooden bowl finds a home. The dead, after all, have no further use for things. The healer arrives at last, summoned to confirm what everyone already suspects. He prods your chest, checks your pulse, and nods sagely. It was a fever, he announces to no one in particular. The body is at peace. The monks pretend this is new information, but everyone already knows. The diagnosis is, in the end, irrelevant. What matters is the declaration. The sick room is now a death chamber, and the rituals of care give way to the rituals of farewell. The official chronicler, every cathedral has one, arrives to record your final moments. He listens attentively to every tale, every rumor, every recollection. In his careful script, your last days become something more than suffering. The fever is reimagined as a noble struggle. Your final words, which may have been a muttered request for water, are upgraded to something suitably dignified. History, it seems, prefers a good story to a true one. Then comes the viewing. Your body, now washed and dressed in clean linen, is laid out for the community. The room fills with incense and solemnity. People come to pay respects, to whisper prayers, to touch your hand or the hem of your shroud in hopes of a borrowed blessing. Some hope for miracles. Stories of healings at the side of the dead are never far from the medieval imagination. Most are simply curious, needing to see with their own eyes that death has, once again, kept its appointment. Meanwhile, the rumor mill works overtime. Some claim you died a saint, others whisper of poison, of secret sins, of divine retribution. A few, perhaps those who envied your position, suggest that you lingered too long out of stubbornness. All of it is fodder for conversation, a momentary break in the monotony of daily life. Death, after all, is the only spectacle that never fails to draw a crowd. Thomas Becket, who has witnessed the public theater of many deaths, his own most famously, hovers at the periphery. You see, he remarks, in this world, dying well is as much about performance as about faith. One is measured not only by how one lived, but by how one died, and how many bear witness. He watches as the monks prepare the first vigil, candles flickering in the gathering dusk. In the days to come, your passing will be discussed, analyzed, exaggerated, and perhaps, for a brief time, mourned. You will be the subject of sermons and supper table gossip, a ghostly presence hovering over every gathering. Your story will be retold, polished with every telling, until only the barest outline of truth remains. Eventually, your place in the community will be filled. Another sick bed, another death, another round of rituals. But for now, you are the center of attention, a public spectacle, a shared event, the latest chapter in the cathedral's long and crowded history of mortality. In the 12th century, death is never just an ending, it is a gathering, a transaction, a story told by many voices. And, for a short while at least, you are the headline. Once the monks are satisfied that your soul has truly departed and the last candle burns low, the real work begins. In the 12th century, what happens to a body after death is both a matter of the utmost seriousness and a form of public art. Your remains become the centerpiece of a series of rituals that stretch over hours, sometimes days, meticulously observed, deeply symbolic, and inevitably practical. The first act is the washing. A small group of monks, chosen for their sobriety and discretion, gather to cleanse your body. This is not the spa treatment you might have wished for in life. The water is lukewarm at best, carried in heavy wooden buckets from the nearest well or hearth. The soap, when it is used at all, is a harsh lye concoction that stings any remaining skin. Yet the process is done with a kind of rough tenderness, a final attempt to show dignity to what is now, quite unmistakably, a corpse. Every finger is wiped, every wound noted. Your hair is combed flat, your eyes pressed shut a final time. Then comes the dressing. Clean linen, reserved for such purposes, is wrapped around you in careful layers. In more affluent cathedrals, a fresh shroud might be available, but here, practicality wins out. The linen is patched, reused, bearing faint stains from other, earlier deaths. Shoes are unnecessary. After all, you will not be walking anywhere. A rosary or a crucifix might be pressed into your hands, fingers folded just so, as if already in prayer. The effect is both peaceful and vaguely theatrical. Your body is now ready for viewing. The chamber is transformed. A makeshift bier is arranged, a sturdy table, draped in the best cloth available, raised on blocks to bring you level with those who come to say their farewells. Candles crowd the air with flickering light and smoky incense, masking the first signs of what everyone knows is coming: decay. The monks process in and out, chanting psalms, reciting prayers, swinging censers in slow, deliberate arcs. Visitors arrive in a steady trickle. Some cross themselves, whispering prayers for your soul's safe passage. Others simply stare, curiosity mixed with the relief of being alive and upright. For the superstitious, touching your hand or the edge of your shroud is a chance to steal a bit of your departing grace. For the less devout, it is just another stop in the daily routine, one more face in a procession of the dead. Not all rituals are as solemn as the monks would wish. In the back of the chamber, servants and junior monks exchange stories, half gossip, half eulogy, about your last days. Someone produces a crust of bread and cheese. Another sips wine brought as a token of remembrance, or perhaps just to steady his nerves. Laughter is not strictly forbidden, but it is frowned upon. Still, in the shadow of death, humor often finds a way. As the hours pass, the rituals intensify. The body is anointed with oil, each joint marked with the sign of the cross, a symbolic preparation for the resurrection to come. A bell is rung at intervals to remind everyone, living and dead alike, that a soul is in transit. Prayers are offered not only for your peace, but for the protection of those left behind. It is believed that death, like disease, is contagious in spirit as well as in flesh. At sunset, the monks gather for the vigil. They pray through the night, taking turns at your side, so that your body is never left unattended. This is part devotion, part superstition. It is widely believed that spirits, both good and evil, are especially active in the hours between death and burial. No one wants to risk leaving your soul alone to wander. Thomas Becket makes his presence felt once more, drifting in the candlelight with a half smile. They treat your body as both sacred and dangerous, he observes. In death, you become both relic and threat, a vessel of holy memory and a reminder that the same fate awaits them all. He watches as a monk carefully folds your shroud, lips moving in silent prayer. At dawn, the funeral procession forms. Your body is lifted, borne on the shoulders of brothers who chant the In Paradisum. The entire community follows, some in genuine mourning, others in the hope of being seen, still others because attendance is expected. The path to the grave is muddy, uneven, but no one complains. Death, after all, is the one journey everyone will eventually make. At the graveside, the final rituals unfold. More prayers, more incense, the scattering of earth. A handful of words about your virtues, drawn from a script used so often that the monks could recite it in their sleep. The grave itself is humble, a shallow trench in the cathedral's shadow, lined with stones and the occasional wilted flower. Once your body is laid to rest, the grave is filled, the mound smoothed, a wooden cross planted at the head. The monks file away, already thinking of the next meal, the next service, the next death. Your place in the world is officially relinquished. For a time, your absence is noted. For a time, prayers are said in your name. But soon, the daily rituals reassert themselves, and you become a memory, one more name in a ledger, one more soul in the long parade of the dead. In the end, the rituals and ceremonies are not for you at all. They are for those who remain, a way to contain their fear, to shape their grief, to remind themselves that even in loss, there is order. In the 12th century, the dead are gone, but the living carry on, bound together by the comfort of ritual and the hope that, when their time comes, they will be given the same careful attention. Death does not leave quietly in the 12th century. It lingers, a presence felt long after your body is lowered into the ground and the last echoes of prayer have faded from the cathedral stones. You are gone, but the shadow of your illness remains, weaving itself into the fabric of daily life, feeding old fears and spawning new superstitions. The monks do not talk about it openly, but you can sense their unease. As they shuffle through the cloisters, they glance sidelong at the bed where you wasted away, quick to cross themselves or mutter a half remembered prayer. The straw mattress is dragged out into the courtyard and burned with a silent, communal determination. The smoke carries away more than fleas and lice. It is a gesture meant to drive away the spirits of sickness. Some say that the souls of the dead, if displeased, can linger in their bedding, inflicting nightmares or even death on the unwary. Better to risk a cold night than tempt fate with haunted straw. Servants are tasked with scrubbing every surface in your former chamber with vinegar and bundles of aromatic herbs. Sage, rosemary, and rue are pressed into cracks and corners, their pungent scent intended to chase away not only physical corruption, but the evil vapors believed to spread disease. For weeks, the room is left empty. No one wants to be the first to sleep where you died. It becomes a place of whispers, a stop for nervous gossip and furtive glances. Stories soon circulate. Some claim they saw strange lights above your grave or heard your voice in the night. Others report ominous signs. A raven perched on the cathedral's roof, a dog howling at sunset, a patch of wilted grass growing where your sweat once soaked the earth. All are interpreted as warnings, reminders that death is never just the absence of life, but a force that demands respect, caution, and ritual. The rumors, of course, grow more elaborate with every telling. One servant swears that while cleaning your chamber, she heard the sound of scratching under the bed. Another insists that the rushes, when burned, gave off an unnatural blue flame. A sure sign, she says, that you were cursed, or worse, cursed at someone else in your final moments. The monks do nothing to dispel these tales. If anything, they quietly encourage them. Fear, after all, is a powerful form of social control. Some of the more pious brothers argue that your death was a sign from God, a warning to repent and redouble their devotion. Special masses are said, candles lit, confessions made. The prior suggests a procession through the cathedral grounds, everyone carrying a relic or a sprig of rosemary to ward off any lingering evil. For a week, the entire community is unusually well behaved, as if careful conduct might appease the unseen forces that hover in death's wake. Others see more worldly explanations. Your illness becomes the subject of debates about hygiene, the alignment of the planets, the moral quality of the cathedral's leadership, or the recent influx of travelers from distant lands. Conspiracies blossom. Was your death a punishment for some secret sin? Did you anger a saint or fail to honor a relic? In the absence of understanding, any explanation will do, so long as it can be repeated with conviction and a knowing look. The relics themselves become points of contention. After your passing, the wax tablet pressed into your hands during your final hours is removed and displayed on the altar, quickly acquiring a reputation for minor miracles. A piece of linen from your shroud disappears, only to resurface in the possession of a canon who claims it wards off nightmares. The remaining fragments of your life, wooden comb, battered rosary, well worn slippers, are distributed, each one imbued with a little more meaning than it possessed while you were alive. The line between memory and magic blurs easily. Thomas Becket, ever the sardonic witness, materializes beside the altar during the evening service. You see, he remarks quietly, the legacy of death is rarely peace. It is anxiety, ritual, and the endless search for meaning. The living must believe they can protect themselves, even if only by burning your straw and praying over your comb. He watches the monks file past your relics, a look of amusement flickering in his eyes. Superstition is the most durable inheritance. Gradually, the acute fear subsides. Time smooths the sharp edges of anxiety, and life at the cathedral resumes its ancient rhythms. New worries replace the old. An outbreak of coughing among the servants, a cow found dead in the fields, the prior's persistent headaches. But the memory of your illness lingers, woven into every whispered warning and every cautious glance at the place where you once lay. In this world, death is never a closed door. It is a draft, a chill, a presence that seeps into the bones of the living. Every cough is a portent, every shadow a reminder. The rituals, the stories, and the superstitions are not simply relics of ignorance. They are tools for survival in a world where the boundary between life and death is as thin as the linen of a shroud. Your story now is not only about how you lived or even how you died, but about how those left behind find a way to carry on, haunted, cautious, and always a little afraid. Now that you are gone, the monks and townsfolk can finally indulge in one of their favorite pastimes, the post-mortem debate. What exactly killed you? Was it the foul air, the evil winds, an imbalance of the four humors, a star in retrograde, or the result of that suspiciously pale stew from 3 days before? In the 12th century, Diagnosis is less a science than a social ritual, a story crafted to suit the mood, the season, and the available scapegoats. The healer, now freed from the responsibility of actually saving you, is quick to defend his craft. He stands among the monks, describing your symptoms with great authority. The patient suffered a persistent fever, a hacking cough, and chills that waxed and waned, he intones, as if reading from a sacred text. The assembled crowd nods, each person certain that had they been given the chance, their favorite remedy would surely have cured you. More onions, perhaps. More garlic. Less bloodletting. Or maybe more. In the end, everyone has an opinion, and every opinion is rooted in ignorance, disguised as tradition. Medical theory in this era is as rigid as it is wrong. The four humors, blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, must be kept in balance. Illness is evidence of imbalance, and the only real debate is which humor is to blame for your demise. The healer blames your excess of phlegm, as demonstrated by your cough and pallor. A junior monk argues for an overabundance of black bile, noting your melancholy in your last days. An elderly canon blames bad air, recalling a peculiar fog that rolled over the cathedral a week prior. To the untrained observer, all of this might seem like guesswork. To the 12th century mind, however, it is as close as anyone can get to scientific consensus. Treatments, accordingly, are prescribed more to satisfy theory than to comfort the patient. Bloodletting remains the most popular intervention, regardless of the illness. If you survived, it was proof of its efficacy. If you died, it was only because the balance was too far gone to be restored. The tools of the trade are few and not reassuring. Knives for bleeding, leeches for stubborn cases, hot irons to cauterize wounds, bundles of dried herbs hung over the bed, and, of course, the ever present chamber pot. The healer takes great pride in his collection of salves and ointments, most of them greasy, pungent, and entirely useless. The application of these remedies is accompanied by prayers and invocations to various saints, just in case the body's humors prove uncooperative. The monks, though less directly involved in your treatment, have their own theories. Some insist that illness is a spiritual matter, a punishment for unconfessed sins, or a test of faith sent by God. They discuss your piety, your attendance at Mass, the generosity of your donations. If you were particularly devout, your death is declared a holy trial. If you were less regular in your devotions, your demise is a cautionary tale. Outside the cathedral, townsfolk spin their own stories. Word of your passing spreads from market to hearth, gathering details as it goes. The apothecary swears he could have saved you with his latest tonic, if only he had been summoned in time. The midwife claims it was a wasting fever brought by a cursed object, a theory supported by the village gossip, who remembers seeing you accept a peculiar coin from a stranger. By week's end, you have died of at least 7 different causes, each more creative than the last. What passes for public health is mostly avoidance. The sick are isolated as best as possible, though no one can agree whether it is to prevent contagion or simply to keep the moaning from disturbing the healthy. No one knows about microbes, but everyone knows that death follows sickness like a shadow. Doors are marked, prayers are said, and life continues, carefully, superstitiously, always alert for the next cough in the night. Thomas Becket, his spectral form drifting among the debating monks, observes with wry amusement. The only certainty in medieval medicine is the certainty of death, he remarks. Cures are rare and explanations are many. The true talent is not healing, but surviving long enough to tell the tale. He drifts past the healer, who is explaining once again why more leeches would have made all the difference. It is a world where medical knowledge advances by inches, usually by accident, and often at great cost. A healer who tries something new and succeeds may become famous or may be accused of witchcraft. Most stick to what is known: blood, sweat, herbs, and prayer. Results are secondary, appearances are everything. The story of your illness in the end becomes part of the local lore. Your treatments are discussed, your symptoms dissected, your death transformed into a lesson for those who remain. But as weeks turn into months, new patients arrive, new debates begin, and your case fades into the background noise of medieval suffering. Medicine in the age of ignorance is a tapestry of superstition, hope, and resignation, stretched thin over a world that knows more about death than about life. And so your story ends, not with a cure, but with another mystery, another chapter in the long, slow evolution of healing. You may have breathed your last in the musty shadows of the cathedral, but your journey is not quite over. In the 12th century, memory is a living thing, stitched, stretched, and reshaped by the hands and tongues of the survivors. As soon as your body is committed to the earth, your life is committed to history, a process equal parts accidental and intentional. First come the chroniclers, the keepers of memory, and masters of embellishment. Every cathedral, monastery, and important household has at least one, a monk or canon whose task is to record notable events. Your death, especially if accompanied by even a flicker of rumor or intrigue, is more than enough to merit a page or two. By the light of a flickering candle, the chronicler sets down your story, his quill scratching at parchment already crowded with the woes and wonders of your age. The record is never just a list of facts. Even if you died of something as pedestrian as a cough and a fever, the chronicler cannot resist improving the tale. He adds color. Perhaps you showed uncommon courage, uttered a wise last phrase, or endured with the patience of a saint. If you were even modestly important, your humility is celebrated. If you were troublesome in life, your passing is described with a tactful, ambiguous sadness. Medieval history prefers saints and sinners, not the complicated muddle of ordinary people. Word of your death spreads far beyond the cathedral. Letters are dispatched to distant relatives, bishops, or patrons, each carefully phrased to suit the recipient's temperament. If you had an enemy, the message is a delicate balance of satisfaction and sorrow. If you had an ally, your virtues are listed in order of political usefulness. Death is a tool, and memory its sharpest edge. Stories start to grow. The monks recall that during your final illness, you saw visions, perhaps of saints, perhaps of demons, perhaps just the flicker of a candle. The servant who wiped your brow remembers a whispered prayer that, in the retelling, becomes prophetic. By the end of the month, your last words have acquired a sheen of wisdom, no matter how much they resembled a request for more water at the time. Relics, too, become part of your memory. A lock of your hair, a splinter of your wooden comb, a scrap from your shroud. Each is preserved, passed around, and assigned powers you never claimed in life. Stories of minor miracles begin to circulate. Someone who touched your blanket finds their cough fading faster than expected. A monk who prayed by your grave claims to have dreamt of you, smiling and healthy, a sure sign of intercession from beyond. Whether these tales are believed is less important than the comfort they provide. Over the years, the narrative only grows. With every telling, your story shifts to fit the needs of the moment. If plague stalks the land, you are remembered as someone who faced illness bravely. If the cathedral is caught in political strife, your loyalty or martyrdom is emphasized, a handy example to encourage obedience or inspire resistance. You become a symbol, your life simplified, and your death conveniently meaningful. Children hear your name in bedtime stories, sometimes as a caution, obey, or you will end up like, sometimes as a quiet reassurance that even suffering can be noble. Pilgrims, passing through on their way to more famous shrines, might hear of your patience or piety and say a quick prayer at your grave. A few, desperate for miracles, even steal a handful of earth from your resting place. The chronicler, looking back after many years, finds your page and smiles. He adds a footnote, rumors of visions, stories of healing, the odd detail that you once owned a cat that never quite liked anyone. History in his hands is a quilt, warm, comfortable, and not entirely accurate. You are never quite forgotten, but you are always transformed. Your story becomes a tool for those who live after you, a reminder, a warning, an excuse, or simply a good tale for a long winter evening. The truth, whatever it was, becomes less important than the myth. Thomas Becket lingers, as always, on the edge of these memories. In the end, he observes, every martyr is remembered more for how their story is told than for what actually happened. We become legends, not out of greatness, but out of need. He seems content with this, or at least resigned. So you drift through the chronicles and the myths, your memory woven into the tapestry of your age. You are part example, part inspiration, part entertainment. In the 12th century, the living need their dead, if not to fear, then at least to remember. And so you persist, reshaped with every telling, never quite alive, never truly gone. You might have thought your journey ended with your burial, your shrouded body lowered into the cathedral's cold earth, surrounded by prayer and incense, as monks tossed in the first clods of soil. But the medieval world is not finished with you yet. In the 12th century, even after death, your flesh and bones remain commodities, sought after for their spiritual political, and economic value. At first, there is decorum. Your grave is marked with a wooden cross, perhaps a simple plaque, and for a few days, the freshly turned earth is left undisturbed. The monks come to pray, the servants whisper superstitions, and the chronicler records your name in the register of the dead. Yet, as time passes, curiosity and opportunity begin to gnaw at the edges of respectability. Relics are the currency of the age. From popes to peasants, everyone believes that the remains of holy men and women possess miraculous power. A single finger bone or scrap of shroud can draw pilgrims, secure donations, and, if you are especially fortunate, become the center of a minor cult. Even those with no pretense of sainthood may find their bones in demand, if not for miracles, then at least for relic trading, which thrives just beneath the surface of religious piety. If you showed even a hint of virtue or fortitude in your final days, the temptation is irresistible. One quiet night, a pair of monks armed with shovels and a determination that suggests both faith and financial savvy dig at the edge of your grave. They remove a small piece, a lock of hair, a toe, or a bit of linen from your shroud. If questioned, they will claim it was done for reasons of devotion. In reality, it is also a shrewd investment. The relic is stored in a reliquary, a gilded box or simple linen pouch, and soon word spreads. The new saint in the cathedral may yet perform wonders. The body, once sacred, now becomes a resource. A local merchant donates a sum for a special prayer, hoping to receive a relic in return. A noblewoman, recently bereaved, asks for a piece of your burial shroud to place beneath her pillow. Even other churches send requests. Surely the blessing of your bones will be shared. A fingernail here, a rib there. Nothing is wasted, and nothing is quite as secret as the monks pretend. Of course, not everyone believes. Some scoff at the traffic in bones and hair, muttering that the only thing miraculous is the money changing hands. Yet even skeptics hedge their bets, pausing to cross themselves when passing your grave, or offering a candle at the altar where your relic supposedly rests. In a world where disease, war, and famine are constants, it never hurts to have one more protector, however dubious the provenance. For your family, if any survive, there is a grim comfort in the dispersal of your remains. Each relic is proof that you are remembered, that your suffering was not in vain. Stories grow around the fragments. A lock of your hair, they say, once calmed a sick child. A sliver of your shroud protected a soldier in battle. With every retelling, the relic gains power, and you become a little more holy by association. Thomas Becket himself, now a seasoned observer of the post-mortem hustle, remarks with a wry smile, "When I died, they took everything, my blood, my hair, even the earth beneath my body. What is left of me now is scattered from here to Rome, and yet I am more present than ever." He gestures at the reliquaries, the candles, the whispered prayers that fill the cathedral every day. The ultimate fate of your remains depends on your posthumous reputation. If miracles occur at your grave, your bones will be exhumed, divided, and enshrined. Pilgrims will flock to see them, hoping for healing or at least a good story to bring home. If not, your fragments may languish in the cathedral's treasury, trotted out for special occasions, or quietly reburied if they fail to draw a crowd. A few enterprising monks might sell scraps to passing merchants, disguised as relics of older, more reputable saints. In the bustling marketplace of medieval faith, authenticity is a flexible concept. If someone believes, then it is true enough. The rest of you, whatever is left, returns to earth. Grass grows over your grave, rain soaks the soil, and your bones settle into the slow, anonymous company of the countless dead. In time, your name fades from memory, but the fragments of your body remain, scattered relics, whispered stories, a presence felt in candles and prayers. In the end, your fate is not to rest in peace, but to be endlessly divided, remembered, doubted, and traded. You are both lost and found, part of the living world's desperate search for meaning in the face of death. And as Becket says, fading into the candlelit dusk, to be remembered is to be used. The dead have little choice in the matter. Once the dust of ceremony settles and the official rituals are concluded, your legacy begins to morph in the hands of the living. Medieval memory is less about accuracy and more about advantage, and death quickly becomes a kind of currency in which everyone seeks their share. At first, your name is spoken with genuine sorrow. The monks mention you in their prayers. Your family, if you had any, sits a little straighter in the cathedral, basking in the residual glow of your solemn departure. But as days turn to weeks, the emotional temperature cools, and a new energy seeps into the memory of your passing, an energy driven by appetite, rivalry, and the everyday opportunism of the 12th century. Suddenly, everyone discovers a connection to you. That servant who brought you water now claims to have been at your bedside for your last confession. The canon who rarely spoke to you in life suddenly possesses a touching story about your piety and wisdom. Each tale, embroidered and re-embroidered, is meant to stake a claim to the social credit accruing from your death. And credit, of course, is not the only thing on offer. Death in this world is an opportunity. Your modest possessions, cloak, shoes, battered cup, even the straw from your bed, become objects of value, parceled out with all the discretion of a street market. A small scrap of linen from the bed of the pious departed finds its way to a merchant's home, where it is displayed as both a relic and a talisman against the evil eye. The last crust of bread you failed to finish is discovered and quietly consumed, just in case your death has left it blessed. The relic trade naturally blossoms. The monks, those models of spiritual detachment, are not immune to the temptations of commerce. A lock of your hair, a fragment of shroud, or a sliver of your wooden comb appears for the right price, presented as proof of your virtue and, by extension, of the buyer's own. Pious donors are subtly encouraged to give generously in exchange for a token which will bring them health, luck, or at the very least, the satisfaction of having participated in a sacred transaction. Thomas Becket, who knows a thing or two about the posthumous marketplace, lingers beside a reliquary with a rueful expression. You should see what they did with my blood, he mutters, bottled and sold by the drop. In the end, the living are always more inventive than the dead. He observes the procession of pilgrims, merchants, and the merely curious who file past your relics, dropping coins and prayers with equal fervor. Word of your passing travels beyond the cathedral walls, carried on the breathless lips of travelers, merchants, and gossip mongers. Your story acquires the gloss of legend. By the time it reaches the next market town, you have performed at least one miracle and possibly two, depending on who is telling the story and what they are hoping to gain. A sick child recovers after touching your relic. A merchant's fortunes change after lighting a candle at your grave. Even those who scoff in public find themselves making small offerings, just in case. For the cathedral, your death is a boon. Pilgrims arrive, drawn by the prospect of grace, healing, or a bit of spectacle. The coffers grow heavier, candles are lit, donations are counted, and your name is woven into sermons and processions. In the shadow of your passing, a small industry takes shape, one that sells hope, absolution, and the comforting illusion that the sacred can be bought, at least in small pieces. Not all are content with crumbs. Rivalries spring up as quickly as weeds. A junior monk accuses another of hiding a more powerful relic. The prior must mediate disputes over which prayers to offer at your tomb and how much each should cost. Even outside the church, townsfolk haggle over scraps of your memory, eager to own a piece of the extraordinary, or at least to claim that they do. Inevitably, the lines blur between memory and invention, between genuine mourning and calculated ambition. Those who knew you best may wince at the spectacle, but few refuse a share of the profits. The more distant your memory grows, the more flexible it becomes. Your story is bent and twisted to fit the needs of the living, an example of piety for the devout, a source of revenue for the ambitious, a useful ghost for those who trade in stories. Through it all, you persist as both presence and product, a commodity in the spiritual and social marketplace. In a world where daily life is precarious and uncertainty rules, the dead must always work a little harder for the living. Your grave, once a place of rest, is now a stop on a circuit of hope, anxiety, and commerce. As Thomas Becket remarks, fading into the candlelit haze of the cathedral, sainthood, like suffering, is rarely wasted. If death is inevitable, it is only practical to make the most of it. And in the 12th century, making the most of it means ensuring that your memory, like your relics, circulates widely and profits many. In the end, you are remembered not only for how you lived or died, but for how well your death feeds the appetites, spiritual and otherwise, of those who remain. You are mourned, yes, but you are also bought, sold, argued over, and transformed into a story told by the fire, a blessing pressed into a palm, a coin dropped in a box. Your legacy, like your body, belongs to the world now. Your story, by now, has settled into the sediment of the cathedral's daily routine, your memory reduced to prayers, relics, and a faintly holy smell lingering in the old straw. Yet in death, as in life, you have played your part in a pageant far larger than yourself, a slow, unchanging ritual in which each death is both lesson and warning. In the 12th century, what does death by illness truly teach? First, it teaches that death is everywhere. There is no corner of medieval life untouched by its shadow. Every cough is a potential messenger, every fever a sign of fate's arbitrary hand. Parents bury children, monks bury brothers. The young and old succumb alike to the same invisible assailants. Nobody is special. Even the mighty Thomas Becket, whose martyrdom resounds through the ages, met death not on his own terms, but at the hands of men and circumstance. Death teaches humility. Whatever the legends may later claim, there is no glory in dying of illness. It is undignified, uncomfortable in public, a slow unraveling of the body, observed and narrated by an audience of monks, servants, and anxious family. You do not get to choose your moment or your manner. Dignity is a luxury reserved for the survivors who shape the story in the aftermath. The dying, in the end, are simply too tired to care. Medieval death is also a great equalizer. Social status, wealth, and learning may buy better bedding or more elaborate funerals, but no amount of privilege keeps the fever at bay. Rich and poor alike are subject to the same fumbling healers, the same dubious remedies, the same post-mortem debates. The prior and the peasant are eventually united in the anonymous earth of the cathedral yard, their bones mingling beneath the stones. Illness reveals the precariousness of knowledge. In an age without germ theory, with only the vaguest understanding of the body's secrets, the explanations offered are as likely to confuse as to comfort. Each death is a small confession of ignorance, a gap between cause and cure, filled with prayer, ritual, and guesswork. The healer's authority is unshakable in the moment, but quickly questioned in the aftermath. The next cough brings a new theory, a new round of debate, and, inevitably, another case to lament. Death, in its slow unfolding, teaches patience to both the sufferer and those who care for them. There are no miracles here, only endurance. Days are measured in fever spikes, in the shuffle of feet outside the sick room, in the slow turning of sunlight across the wall. Survival is a matter of luck, strength, or, as some believe, the favor of God. Most often, it is just a matter of outlasting the worst and hoping for the best. But perhaps the greatest lesson is this: the memory of suffering is always distorted by the needs of the living. After your death, your story becomes currency, traded in the marketplace of rumor, reshaped by every tongue that tells it. Some will use it to inspire fear, others to peddle hope, a few to remind themselves of the brevity and uncertainty of life. Relics are bought and sold, prayers offered in exchange for favors, and even your shroud finds itself in the hands of those eager to profit from the passage between worlds. Thomas Becket, who has watched 1,000 deaths since his own, leans in with a knowing look. In this age, death is not the end, but the beginning of new meanings. Your suffering may be forgotten, but your bones and your story will nourish generations of fear, faith, and enterprise. He gestures to the monks, still arguing over the proper handling of your relics, and the chronicler, embellishing your final moments for posterity. If you could rise from your grave, you might marvel at how little has changed since your time. Death still arrives uninvited and inconvenient. The living still search for patterns, reasons, and scapegoats, and then everyone still clings to rituals, as if enough incense or careful words could push back the inevitable. Yet, even amid the ignorance and the commerce, there is a kind of dignity in the endless repetition of mourning and memory. Every death, including yours, is a thread in the tapestry, a grim, necessary reminder that to live is always to await the end. The stories told in the wake of suffering may be flawed, self serving, or even absurd, but they keep the dead alive in the only way that matters, as warnings, as examples, as echoes in the night. In the 12th century, the greatest lesson of death by illness is that nothing is permanent, neither pain, nor memory, nor even the grave itself. Each generation inherits the fears, the stories, and the questions of those who have gone before, and each in turn shapes them anew, fitting old bones into new myths. You are gone, but your death, like every death, continues to teach, quietly, insistently, without end. At last, your story is finished, or as finished as any story can be in the 12th century, where memory is slippery and history is written in candle smoke. The candles have guttered out in the cathedral. The last of your relics has found its home or its buyer, and the monks have moved on to new tasks and new deaths. Your place in the world has closed around the gap you left, smoothing itself over as water erases a footprint in mud. So, what is the lesson, if there is one? What exactly have you learned from your long, meandering, occasionally pungent journey through medieval illness and death? If you are hoping for inspiration or a grand revelation, you may be disappointed. The Middle Ages specialize not in catharsis, but in repetition. If history is a teacher, it is the sort who reads the same passage aloud, over and over, until the ink fades and the audience dozes. Here is the boring moral, the kind you might mutter to yourself as you drift off to sleep in your straw bed, or as the chronicler's quill runs dry on a chilly midnight. In the 12th century, death by illness is both the rule and the routine. There is no tragedy unique enough to escape the slow churn of communal experience, nor any individual whose passing is not ultimately absorbed by the hungry mechanism of daily survival. If you learned anything, it is that suffering is rarely noble. More often, it is itchy, tedious, and deeply public, played out on straw mattresses under the eyes of relatives, monks, and servants who are all just waiting for the next sickbed to claim their attention. Heroism is not found in resisting the inevitable, but in enduring it with a modicum of grace, or, at least, without biting too many fingers during bloodletting. History, despite the chronicler's best efforts, does not remember the texture of your pain, the color of your bruises, or the indignity of being both the patient and the subject of rumor. It remembers instead the rituals, the way your body was washed, the order of the prayers, the stories told by those who needed a saint, a warning, or just something to gossip about during supper. The machinery of memory is practical and remorseless, grinding personal tragedy into communal tradition. And so you slip, finally and completely, into the collective sleep of the dead. Your bones rest in soil, grown thick with the remains of other, equally unremarkable lives. Your name may flicker for a generation or two in prayers, sermons, or the footnotes of a particularly diligent chronicler, but the details will fade, replaced by newer tales, fresher tragedies, and brighter hopes. Thomas Becket, your spectral companion through these grim proceedings, appears one last time as you float at the edge of dreams. There is no shame in being forgotten, he says, voice as dry and patient as dust. What matters is that you bore your share of suffering, of waiting, of being misunderstood. The rest is for the living to argue over. He pauses, eyes twinkling in the dimness. If you must haunt something, let it be their stories, not their sleep. You realize that the real victory in medieval death is not sainthood, nor martyrdom, nor even a decent turnout at your funeral. It is simply this: surviving long enough in rumor and ritual to give the next generation a reason to wash their hands, burn their straw, and pray a little harder at the end of the day. Your story will do until it does not. As you drift into the deep, eternal night of collective forgetting, the world outside continues in its usual, unhurried way. The cathedral bells ring, the monks chant, the children play in the muddy street. Somewhere, a new cough begins, and the whole cycle starts again, patient as ever. If the story made you drowsy, then it has served its final purpose. One last mercy from the long, boring, but oddly comforting history of medieval suffering. Sleep well. The dead are good company for those who know how to listen.